All right. Okay, so something a little different today. First off, I want to apologize. Um, I was supposed to do a stream last Sunday, I think it was, or Monday. I promised that I would do a stream, and I promised Roger that I would fly um, to Cuba, do a flight to Cuba. Um, from Miami, and I didn't get a chance to do that. I just been so damn busy. Last weekend was crazy. The wife and I took a little trip down to Bangor, Maine, in the RV, and got back pretty late. And then work took over on Monday, and I've been stupid busy. And then partway through the week, I made a decision. So here's the deal. There are a ton of people that are doing streaming with X-Plane, and we all have the same format. We fly a flight, we talk to people, and we try to get viewers and whatnot. And I'm happy doing that. I have a lot of fun with that. Of course, I'm going to fly anyway. I might as well stream it, right? Um, so I'm not going to stop doing that necessarily. But I've made a decision, and this is why I named this stream something new. Something that I tried to do about, oh gosh, I started seeing other people do this 20 something years ago. It started out with a guy named Peter Koss and Stephen Koss in the Toronto area, and they got a hold of some A320 parts, and they started building a cockpit in their basement. And at one point, I remember going down there, and they had a sheet hanging from the ceiling in front of the cockpit, and a projector projecting from behind onto the sheet, and we were sitting in the cockpit, and it was a full replica, at least the right dimensions, and I think it was partially a real A320 cockpit anyway, but so it was to scale, and you'd have your pilot and your co-pilot sitting there, and you'd fly, and we had a bunch of the panels set up, and we had some monitors for different different parts of the glass cockpit, sort of, and using Project Magenta software, we would have that kind of stuff on there, and Pete and Stephen went on to make a business out of it. And I think they're called Flight Deck Solutions, I think. And so they're doing very well, and they've done a lot of those around the world, and they build parts for all sorts of different airliners now. So I think it was about 7 or 8 years ago, I decided that I was going to start building one of those. And I went out and I bought a bunch of wood, and I bought a bunch of stuff, and I started ordering parts online and like little bits and pieces, and trying to do it as economically as possible because I am not a rich man. So I decided to do that, and I worked at it pretty hard for a while, and then I started realizing, as I was trying to decide what the next piece that I had to get was, that holy cow, this thing's going to cost me a fortune. I had plans for 3 projectors for the outside views on a curved screen, and just the software alone for that kind of thing was pretty crazy. So I started looking at, you got to have a decent throttle quadrant, and you got to have a decent middle pedestal. You got to have the dash, the glare shield, and you got to have all the little you got to have many computers running all the different screens and all the different parts and then you got to have an overhead, and you have to have like just even the software to warp the outside views onto the curved screen was like a couple $1,000 or something. It's crazy. It was crazy expensive, and then I realized that I got myself way in too deep, and there's no way I can afford to do something like that. And even the stuff that I had done was so in terms of quality. I was just building out the overall structure of the cockpit, and I was going for the Cadillac, and I just realized there's no way I can do this. Um, I just didn't have the resources, and in some cases the skills for some of that stuff. So here we are, 7, 8, 9 years later, and I still got the itch. I got to do it. But I got to scale I got to scale what I'm shooting for down, and really try and build this thing in stages and make it so that it's flyable as soon as possible, and then slowly work on it to make it better. So what I'm going to do, and I'll show you what I'm doing here. What I'm planning on doing is I ran into this guy's YouTube videos. And he built himself a little Cessna, cockpit. Let's see if I can find a picture of it. Come on, there it is there. So what he did was he went and he put some carpet down on his floor, and he built a little frame that goes around him, and he did it to the dimensions of Cessna 172. And he's got a big old 110-inch screen out front with an ultra short throw projector doing the front outside visuals. He's using X-Plane, and he's got 2 TVs that act as the side. And in this picture, it looks so-so, right? But once he has it running, it actually looks really good. So he's got some windows, and he's got the front window, and then he's got this here showing the 6-pack is a little iPad. And then he's got a VR Insight. And this is probably one of the more expensive parts of this simulator, I'm guessing. That thing's a couple $1,000. So is what it is, right? So that's what he's got, and he's got some Go Flight module. He's got I think they call it the TPM with the throttle and the mixture and the whatever that is. I think that's the mixture, throttle, and I don't know. Anyway, he's got that thing, and he's got his little throttle quadrant there, and he's got the little fuel selector down at the bottom, and that little box right there is. See if I can zoom in. Yeah, I can. There we go. That little box down there is a little unit that he hooks his headsets up to, because if you can see on the sides here, he's got his headsets hanging out, and they're all plugged into that. And he's got some office chairs that he took the arms off of, and he slides them in. He's got carpet. It's directly on the floor. I believe in his new setup, because he just moved, he's got some squishy black foam underneath there. So yeah. 1 second. Hey, Roger. Sorry, man, I didn't see you there. Let me just drag this over to my other monitor, if I can. Oops. So I can keep an eye on the chat. There we go. Is there an MD-83 World Atlantic? I'm not sure what your question is. What's World Atlantic? MD-83 is obviously the aircraft. There's an MD-80 for X-Plane. It's a really nice one. I know 104th Knight's been flying it quite a bit. And it's a really nice creation, but it's a different beast to fly. It actually handles a lot of the when you're coming in for a landing, the ground effect is very prominent in the plane, and there's a lot of quirks to the systems, but he's doing a good job of it, so it's probably pretty good. All right, so sorry, let me get back to this quick. So, and then all these little panels here, and they're not on right now, but they're all just little SciTech single. You can program whatever display you want on them, and that's how he's handling all of his different instruments. He's got a little iPad or whatever that is right there. I think he puts some kind of it's one of those pilot software things on there, probably for moving map or maybe some charts or whatever. And over here, he's got a little Lilliput touchscreen monitor, and he uses that for GPS or the GNS system, all that kind of FMC-ish type stuff. And he's got a couple of different yokes and some foot pedals underneath. And you can have two different yokes running X-Plane at the same time, which is kind of cool. Basically, you'd have to do a handoff saying my plane, and whoever starts moving it is in control. I believe that's how it works. I haven't tried it myself yet. But this got me thinking, because this thing here is it's really inexpensive. I may not have the VR Insight. I'm not going to be using this exact layout, but it looks pretty good. It looks pretty good, and I do have quite a bit of hardware that I'll be using. So obviously, I'm not going to build a full to scale airliner, because everybody knows here that I like flying the airliners, right? I like the big jets. So I'm not going to have some massive to scale perfect replica of an airliner built in my basement. I just don't have the resources and the time, as I said. So my thoughts are that I was going to use this model and maybe widen it out by maybe a foot or maybe less, just to give myself a little more room to have a little something in the future in the center to control some things. So my thoughts are, because I do have a projector, but it's not a short throw projector, so I can't have the front view. If depending on my space, you just don't have enough room to get the image down onto the screen and keystoned properly with a regular projector, because the height of this guy will actually get in the way, and you won't be able to see your outside view. So I'm going to start off. I got an old 42-inch 1080p monitor or TV. I'm going to throw it in front for now until I get the money together for that. So that's fine. That'll take care of that. Then I got to run out. I'm going to buy some cheap little 32-inch TVs to put in the windows like this guy. While I'm on the subject, let's jump back and I'll show you what it takes to build this thing. So if you go into the schematics, and don't worry, I'm not going to spend all the time on this guy's site. I have other stuff to show you. So this is the basic structure of what he's building. It's this part here is the cabin. You can see it just sits right on the ground. So you're not going to have linkages underneath or anything fancy like that, but it's good, and it looks relatively easy to build. We'll see what happens when I try. But then he's got this. This is his glare shield, and if you took a look at the other picture, he did have actually like a dash on top of this thing, and he used high density foam and wrapped it in leatherette and just kind of wrapped it around, and it just kind of fits in that spot. So what I'm going to do probably is the exact same thing, and it floats, and this shelf here slides on top of these little guys that are sticking out right there. So I'm going to start building this thing. And like I said, I think I might try to make it just a little bit wider so I have a little more room for instrumentation, but not too much. It should be fine. But it definitely gives you that sense of immersion, and it definitely gives you the sense of you're not going to have to move the mouse around, move the view around, and play around with the inside of the cockpit. You're going to have all your own stuff. So that leads me to my next point. Okay, so if you have X-Plane and you're projecting it, or you're running it off of TVs or whatever you're doing, that'll give you your outside view. Done. The next step is, well, now you have to be able, because you don't have access to those cockpit parts, you need to be able to do an entire flight somehow, front to back, without using a mouse. And that's the trick. That is the trick. So I do have some GoFlight panels. I've had them for a long time. Let's go to GoFlight's site. We'll go to GoFlight site and I'll show you which ones I have. I wish I didn't have these particular ones sometimes, but I do. Sorry. So I have an old MCP. Do they still have this on here? The old MCP, probably on page 2. Do they have it? Wow, I don't see it. Okay. Ha! Okay, I should have had all this lined up before I started streaming. Oh well. Modules. Huh. It does not look like they have it anymore. Anyway, it's pretty much an MCP in a generic sense. It has course, a display and a rotation knob and a button for nav. It's got heading display rotator thing, and then a hold. It's got indicated airspeed with a selector knob that will switch it to Mach. It has a hold button and a rotator encoder for that. Then it's got the vertical speed display and the little slider thing like that you would normally see that looks like this guy. It's got that, and it's got an altitude display with a hold, an approach button, a back course button, and a big disengage bar, kind of like this guy, and an AP button to turn the autopilot on and off. So I got the GoFlight MCP. And so I also have a T8, which they probably have in here. A T8. Yeah, it's basically this. Mine's black, but it's basically this guy. And so he's got a bunch of switches. He's got 8, and he's got some lights, and he's got these little squares that you put little magnetic things in there to tell you what the switch does. And I'll probably have to make my own of those because I lost all mine except for the ones that are on it still. And I also have the GF166A, which is basically, let's see if they have it here. Maybe they don't. It's basically a radio switch. Here it is there, that guy. So this guy, you can use these buttons, these little white buttons here and here, to switch between what they are. So you can go from, COM 1, COM 2, NAV 1, NAV 2, and then you dial it in with this guy. But I got 2 buttons. One's the outer button and an inner button, so you can do this side and then this side. And then when you press that button, it just switches it over like you would normally see in an airliner. So I got one of those too. So now the trick is, since I've decided I'm going to base this off of the JAR A320. I'm not going to wait for the other one, and there's a good reason for that, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. It's a sound choice, don't worry. But the trick is, I only have these buttons. This is all I got to work with, really, until I get myself I'm going to have to build an encoder of some kind and get some and use, add some switches to this thing. But really, for the most part, I mean, think about when you start up an A320, and you guys have seen me do it like a bunch of times. So what do you got to do? First thing you got to do is you got to turn on battery 1, and you got to turn on battery 2. So if you think about it logically, you could start doing that. You could say, okay, let's start from the right. Over here, I'm going to say that's battery 1, this is battery 2. And yeah, I can hook those up through this software right here. Oh, it's already running. There we go. I got this software right here. It's a GoFlight interface tool for X-Plane. And I can go into my T8, and I can go in and assign it to that switch, and I can say battery 1, battery 2. Okay, so if that's true, then what else you got? Next thing you got to do is you got to start up your APU master switch. There's another switch, and then you actually have to start the APU. So that's your starter button. And then after that, you got to align your IRSs. So if there's 3 of those, boom, boom, boom. And you can see that I'm going to quickly run out of buttons on this thing. So what I'm going to do, what I started doing yesterday was kind of breaking it down into steps. And until I get more switches, more panels, maybe even more realistic panels, I have to be able to make this thing work with the number of buttons and switches that I have. So what I've tried to do, and I haven't quite finished it yet, but I have it partially planned, is that I can make it so that when I flip this switch, both batteries go on. And I can do that through that software that I just showed you. I can simulate pretty much anything in order and even put in breaks and time and all sorts of stuff. But I can make it so that one switch operates both batteries. So boom, I can hit switch number 1 down here and say, boom, there you go. Actually, I guess that's switch number 8. Both batteries. And then the next one can be APU, master and start. So flip that and both of those happen. The next one can be IRS alignment, and you can have all the switches go into the right spot with the throw of one switch. Because realistically, you don't really touch any of that stuff after the fact anyway. You can turn them off, but you don't really do much independently. I even hooked up the after you turn the 3 switches to align in the A320, I also made it so that you can it'll take care of the system and that, and then waiting and then hitting enter, so it'll start the alignment procedure and all that. I should fire up X-Plane in the background while we're doing this so that I can show you what I'm talking about. All right, so next is after the alignment, you do need some switches. There's an awful lot of lights, especially the internal lights, but more specifically the important ones, the external lights. There's a lot of switches for those things. But realistically, you got about 3 phases of flight. You got when you're backing out, and when you're taxiing, and then when you're taking off, and then once you're above 10,000 in the air. So you got 3 or 4 phases of flight, and you can fudge it a little bit and say you got like on the ground lights, in the air lights could be the same, and then maybe another one to turn on and off your takeoff lights. So really, I could, for the time being, break this down into 2. So that means I've got my battery now, my APU. Here, let's see if we can get a straight on one. Yeah, it's easier. Battery on 8, APU stuff on 7, IRS on 5, and 2 more for lights, right? So that still frees me up. I still have 3 more switches to do other things with. Now, keep in mind, this doesn't count. This isn't counting the extra buttons that I have on my throttle quadrant. I got 6 or 8. Well, technically 9 buttons on there if you count the throttle detents. So I also have, there's buttons on my yoke and stuff like that too. So, and that's another weird thing. I haven't decided whether I'm going to actually hook up the yoke or not yet. But there we go. All right, let's X-Plane running here. Let's see, we'll just resume the last flight, and I'll just jump back in here. All right, so really, that's one of the challenges, okay? So you got to be able to manage a flight, go through a whole flight without using a mouse or a keyboard. So you really have to have some switches and dials and whatnot. You got to have all that stuff. So my MCP, of course, is a little different. I'm going to have to figure out how to handle the pushes and the pulls on the buttons on the MCP. But really, Airbuses, you don't play a whole lot with that kind of stuff. So you can repurpose some of those buttons. You can play with some of those things, and you can do a lot of. You can manage a lot of this other stuff with those buttons once you get this interface software running. Okay, so that's the switches, that's the dials, that's all the stuff to manage their flight without actually requiring to use a keyboard and mouse. Okay, so on to the next challenge. So now you're sitting there, you got your outside visuals, whether it's projector, whether it's a TV, um, and you got some switches and buttons and stuff so that you can go through the different phases of flight without managing anything. So what do you got to do next? Well, you got to be able to display all your information. And if you go and you take a look at, let's see, the traditional cockpit software was called Project Magenta. And it still is to some extent. It's very high end, it's very well done, it's very professional, and it's very close to the real thing. So this is what it looks like. And if we're at this point where they got Boeing, they got Airbus stuff, but really, I'm just going to take a look at this. So if we take a look at Project Magenta Airbus, and you can scroll down, you can see they got themselves a little MCP with the EFIS. That's another problem I'm going to have to talk about. They have the ND and this guy too. So it's all good, and then they got their CDU. So they provide the software for all this stuff, and it works really good. So let's take, you're like, awesome. So you go and you take a look. I don't know what the prices are right now, but back in the day, it was thousands, and just for software. And you still have to hook it up to the hardware, which is great because that's what it's meant for. So really, if you got a little, the money, this is the way to go. But I'm going to do something a little different, and this will explain why I chose to use the JAR A320. I'm using XHSI. So what this does is it gives you the ability to have, and I could probably fire it up and show you. Do I have the software on here? I do. Now, this is the cool part with this. If you run this on any other computer, there's a plugin that goes into X-Plane that will give you all this stuff on other computers. So if you have an old laptop, an old tablet that runs Windows software, or Linux, or Mac, or anything, I'm thinking Raspberry Pi could even do this, and then you could buy some cheap $30 displays off of Wish, or some site. So they got a clock. They've got the annunciators, and I don't know why it's not showing anything. Are we not running? Oh, we should probably turn the batteries on. Watch. So I got my GoFlight hooked up, so I can hit my battery. They both came on. I can hit my APU, and both of these guys are starting up. I can even, once the power's going, I even have a light that will illuminate once this guy's actually providing power on that T8 button. That's what I hooked it up to. Okay, so give this a minute. We'll go outside and listen to it wind up. I had this airplane sitting on the tarmac here for like 6 or 7 hours yesterday, just sitting there listening to it. So let's just wait for a second. Boom. The little green light will come on. My little green light came on. Everything's perfect. Now I hit the next switch and watch. You can watch. These three guys are going to come up. This guy's going to turn to STS. This guy's going to go to System 1, and we're going to hit Enter after 3 seconds. So if I go boom. Oh, sorry. I forgot about that. Fuel pumps. Fuel pumps. That's what I put there. So I hooked up all of these fuel pump buttons to that one. Now it's the IRS. There we go. See? Now it goes boom, 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 boom. And then it hits Enter after 3 seconds, and it's doing its countdown. So that's pretty handy. So now that this guy's firing up, we should very shortly here be able to see. Yeah, so now we have green for these guys. So it has some annunciators, so I can stick that behind a panel somewhere off of a monitor. It has the clock. There it is. It's got a CDU running, and if you format it properly, yeah, anyway, but this is just the display. So you can go into, there he is. So you can go into this guy and go CDU, and you can say preferences, CDU, and you can just say don't give me the keyboard, because it's not actually a functional keyboard, it's just a display. So that's another thing that I will talk about in a little bit. So this guy, you can resize him, put him where you want. You probably have to play with the font a little bit here, but I'm not sure that's capable right now, but we'll see. Anyway, minor little things, but so this is the display for the FMC. So whatever's down here is up here. So if I come down here and I go, give me my init page, and I come back, look at that, boom, there's my init page. Looks similar, it's almost the same. It's very, very close. The next thing is you're going to need to see these guys down here. So we also have our PFD and our ND, and they are actually live. And you can go into XHSI settings, and you can say, who am I going to send this information to? Who's going to be running XHSI? And so I have two other machines. I got a little tablet, and I got an old laptop, and they're both running XHSI, and with all those screens, and there they are. And it just sends the information out to them, and they will display that kind of stuff. And it's live. Look, it's even moving a little bit right there, maybe with some wind or something. I think it's just introduced error. So it's not exactly the same. If you look at this screen and if you look at this screen, they're a little bit different. You can, however, change the style from Boeing to Airbus, and that will help improve it a little bit. So if you notice, all of a sudden this looks a lot more like it does down here. I actually like it a little better, honestly. And this guy has some extra information that this guy doesn't have, but it's really good. It's really good. And so really, and these things move and do all the things and show you all that stuff. So all you got to do really is take these guys and you know, toss them on a monitor, and then stick the monitor behind something, and then there you go. Now you do interface. You don't interface through the computer that's running these. You interface through here. So the cool part is you tell the plane in the X-plane instance, this is what I want to do, and all it's going to do is shoot it out to XHSI, and it's going to display it properly. It's going to, you know, if I, you know, turn on as soon as I'm taking off and I hit my flex, it's going to show the flex right there, just like it does down here, and so that's great. So you know, and they've worked with the JAR specifically, and many other aircraft and base X-plane to make it work as best it can with these systems. So that's a really cool thing, and it just happens to be my current favorite airplane. I've always been a Boeing guy, but right now my favorite airplane is the JAR A320, and I'm sure the flight factor is going to be great. But yeah, this stuff works with it, and it's meant to work with it, and a lot of people are using it that way. So, and you can see my TCAS off and transponder, all that kind of stuff. We do also have these two displays. There's my MFD right there, and there's my ECAS. So this one is actually that one right there. And it's got the same things. Look, there's parking brake, there's my landing down, my IRS align in 3 minutes. It's telling me exactly how long it's going to take, which is great. So there's a lot of really good stuff here. We have, did I miss any? No, I think that's it. You know, you know, they got these little lights on there, but we also have this little annunciator section here. And I think you can set up your annunciator. I'm not sure. There's probably some preferences for that guy, so that I can either change its format or you know, you can change. The one thing I haven't figured out yet is how can, like, a lot of these properties are switchable. You know, like, so if I want my MFD, which is this guy here, if I want him to do something else in the preferences, it says switchable, or you can totally make it permanent. But the cool part is you can also go in up here and say, MFD, I want you to show me bleed air. Boom. So I got to figure out how to make this switchable through some kind of external control so I don't have to use a mouse. Because you can flip between all this stuff. I mean, look at this, airport charts. Really? Check this out. Maybe I don't have it set up properly. Hang on. Oh, I don't. Hang on. I did it from my other machine. I actually shared this through the network and it worked perfectly. So now I hit that. I hit apply. It's going to go. It's going to do a bunch of stuff. Route through their X-Plane directory and get a bunch of stuff. Keep in mind, guys, I've been using this thing for like 5 minutes. I used it yesterday. But look at this. Now that it knows where that is, it'll show me a little map of the airport. It's got runways. It's got frequencies. It doesn't have taxiways, but yeah. So that's just right there. So all I got to do is figure out how to hook up some kind of rotary knob or something that will change what this guy does. Look at this flight plan. We don't have one yet. RTU display. So just how are all my radios set up, right? And then all the usual ones. Lower ECAS, which we saw already. Bleed air, cabin pressure, electronics, or whatever. Hydraulics, the fuel panel. This is all Airbus. APU. Is the APU running? Yep, 100% in. Yep, 358 EGT. Air conditioning. Oh, my GoFlight tool broke. That's all right. Air conditioning. Doors and windows. Wheels. Flight controls. Cruise. Hey, Zachary. How you doing, man? Sorry I didn't see you sooner. Welcome aboard. We're just talking about some extra software. You know what? You guys can't see that. I'm looking on my screen. Why can't you see that? Whoa. Hang on. Sorry, guys. I'm showing you all this stuff and there's nothing on the screen. That's funny. Let me change X-Plane to a window and see if it shows up now. Window. It's really odd that you guys can't see any of this. Wow, this is why I shouldn't stream without planning strange things. Come on. Okay, let me just take a look at what's going on here. Yeah, it should be capturing the whole screen. I don't know why it's only capturing. Why are you only capturing X-Plane? That doesn't make any sense. X-Plane's not even running, like, up on my screen right now. So weird. Here I am talking away about the stuff and you can't even see it. Huh. And it doesn't seem to be doing anything different. All right, let me just I'll just add another display. There's gotta be a way to do this. It's supposed to be capturing my desktop, but oh, wait a minute. Now you can see. Sorry guys. There we go. So, yeah, so anyway, it's got all these screens. So basically, once I figure out the right way to have these things displayed, hopefully windowless at some point, then I have my outside views on the TVs. I got my controls, my hardware controls, so I can fly the plane and I can set the plane up and do all that kind of stuff. and now I have displays on the dashboard. So really, I'm almost there. I can pretty much do a whole flight. So what am I missing? What am I missing? Well, I can fly the plane. I can set up most of the plane. I can't, at the moment, do anything with the the CDU. Do I have that guy today? I didn't close him, did I? No, I did not. So if I have this guy sitting here, I need some way to get that information in there. Now, I haven't really. This is my stumbling point at this point. I don't have a CDU. I don't have like the actual, or the MCDU, the actual keyboard with the little buttons that go on either side of this thing with a screen inside of it that will display this stuff. I don't have that. I do have a little. I got a little Windows tablet that I bought like 4 or 5 years ago. A little Windows tablet that will do the job great. But when I changed this guy here to actually use the keyboard, it's only in this case for visual purposes. So if I had this, and I'll see if I can do this properly a little bit. That's about right. So if I had this thing sitting there on a display, you'd think, great, I could just press the keys, right? Well, and this is confusing to me because now it's working. Yesterday I tried to do this, and I was using this keyboard with a touch screen, and it didn't work. Maybe it's working here because I'm actually on the computer that has running X-Plane. I'm not sure. So now I'm confused because this is awesome, because that means theoretically, if I wanted to go from C, Y, H, Z and go to, I don't know, C, Y, Y, G and punch that in, align IRS, if I go back into X-Plane now and take a look at that, it's there, which is awesome, because this is confusing to me, because I was using my touchscreen Windows tablet and I would press these buttons and it didn't do anything. So now I want to go retry that, because I thought this was just for picture purposes only, and honestly, I don't want just a touchscreen like this, even though they are just buttons. Eventually I want to have the hardware, but if I can get away with having a touchscreen, this is cool. So I got to figure out why this works in here but it doesn't work over there. So that's awesome. Well, either way, right now I could drag this, well, that's ugly. I could drag this to a monitor right now and I should be able to use this. As long as I can not use a mouse. If I can find a way to hook it up so that my tablet can use these touch points, that is freaking awesome. Because I thought I was going to have to go and get hardware. I was going to talk to you guys about all this. I was going to have to go get a keyboard encoder of some kind and get all this information in there, so that I could, hook it up to a whole pile of buttons. And how many buttons are there? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Like that's like 70 something buttons plus 6 there, 6 there. So that's a shitload of buttons, and then you have to encode them all and get that over to X-Plane. But if I can get away with just a touch screen and this works fine, then that's what I'll use, which is great. So now I'm tempted to go and try that out again. You know what I realized? It's not a font problem, it's an alignment problem. It's not aligning properly, is it? Because if this guy was started up here, then these guys would fit in there no problem. Right side, left side. No, I don't see any of their preferences for that. Huh. Yeah, fair enough. I'll have to figure that out. I'm sure there's a setting for that somewhere. So now I'm excited, because I thought for sure I was shit out of luck with the FMC. But I might be able to get it to work, which is pretty friggin' cool. So I go to my flight plan, go to, yeah, see, they don't exactly align properly. If I want to take off on 23, that's the third one down. Is that going to work? I don't know. What's it saying down there? Oh, I picked 14. There. Interesting. Departure. So it must be the fourth one. There we go. No SID. No SID. No trans. And then there's obviously stuff below this. Yeah, I'm gonna have to figure out how to align those properly. That's pretty awesome. Boom. Look at that. See, so it's working. I just got to figure out the alignment, and I got to figure out how to get the touch stuff working on my screen. So if I have a laptop that's running the front displays, these guys, and if I have my touchscreen Windows computer running the CDU FMC, and I have my GoFlight stuff doing radios and all the instrument stuff above, my joystick and my throttle quadrant doing the rest, I should be in business. So realistically, I should have enough to get actually flying right out of the gate. I should be able to do this. So that is why I was going to do a stream yesterday, but I got carried away with some of this stuff. The GoFlight stuff, you know. So I have, yeah. So I use this detective guy, and it pulls in all the information. So I have switches. So there's this switch. Oh, twice 0. If I go to this switch, you can see I made a switch event called jar bat1 on. It's actually just battery on, because if you look over here, jar 320 bat1 on does bat1 start and bat2 on. So it's doing all of that stuff. And then over here, the APU does a whole pile of APU stuff on the on and on the off. It turns it all off. That off. APU. See, it just reverses everything basically. Fuel pumps. There's 6 different fuel pump switches that you have to play with to go on and off. And I also have I'm trying to set up my altimeter clockwise and counterclockwise on the knob for the MCP. That's the only thing that I can't get working properly on that one. So that's how that works, and so there's all my switches. There's my MCP and all the different bits of functionality that it has. It's got quite a bit. And then my radio, which I haven't set up yet. So it looks like, and I will stream. I promise, guys, I will definitely be streaming. I'll be streaming from this cockpit, and I'll probably give updates as I'm going through this process. It's probably going to take me. It'll probably take me a week or so to get the wood part, you know, like the framing done and the walls up. It'll probably take me another week or two to get like just the glare shield started. But I'll give updates as I go. I'll just make it a vlog instead of a blog, and that way people can see what I'm going through to get this thing going. And since I'm streaming, it'll give me motivation to actually complete it. So that is what I'm currently doing, guys. And I should make a note that all this stuff, this HSI is free. The GoFlight, if you happen to have some GoFlight, they're not free, but if you happen to have some anyway, the interface software is only like 30, 40 bucks, something like that. And it really does give you the flexibility to be able to manage some of these complex airliner type things. You do have to do a lot of programming up front with this guy, but it's not that hard. It's not that hard once you get used to it. And yeah, and this software here is great and they're still actively working on it, so it's getting better and better. So I guess, you know, realistically, this guy would be down here. Ooh, too far. There we go. So yeah, basically that's the layout, and then I could potentially throw up my warning indicator. Yeah, so there's a lot of different settings in here, and I do have to figure out how to eventually get into a hardware state. But yeah. So that's it, guys. So I don't think I'm going to do a flight today. It's Happy Thanksgiving, and if you're in Canada, I think it's Columbus Day or something like that tomorrow if you're in the U.S. So happy Columbus Day, I think it is. So yeah, I have to go and eat some turkey. So I'll be doing that instead of flying, I guess. But this is what been up to, and this is what I'm going to be doing going forward. But you know, as we get it into a flyable state, because I can't go that long without doing a flight, and that will take up my main simulator PC. So I will be flying soon, even in a very, very incomplete state once I get it set up. So I'm working on the software right now, as you can tell, so realistically, it shouldn't be that long before I can actually get into it and start flying, rudimentary anyway. And I'll be able to stream it. I'll probably have to get some kind of good webcam and hang it off the back of the simulator so you can see everything, and you'll get to look at the back of my head while I'm flying. So should be interesting to say the least. So I don't know if I missed anything there. It was pretty in depth, just for an introduction video into what I'm planning on doing. But yeah, so that's basically it. Oh, wait, one last thing while I'm thinking about it. The issue I am having, let me turn this so its windows are not on top. The issue I'm going to have is I haven't figured out quite yet how I'm going to handle this guy. There's obviously some rotary encoders in there. I don't necessarily in the Airbus need the FD button, or I do need the ILS button, but I can wire that up to one of my GoFlight ones. But this guy, and especially the range selector on the from the EFIS down to the ND, I need to have that. And also I'd like to be able to do these, but I'm not exactly sure how much of an effect it has on what's displayed in there. I think you have to control that separately, which is one of the only things you have to control separately. It seems like these don't really matter, but this one does much. Right now it's set for 20, although they're showing 20 on the middle ring, which is a little weird. Go to 40, changes to 40. So this guy does control what's in here. So I'm really interested to see how I can reproduce at least this knob to start, because you do need to change that as you fly. But I also want to know how to hook up switches and controllers to XHSI, sorry, tongue twister, the HSI software. So I need to know, how can I change my MFD to all these different things? How can I switch my ECAS to all these different things, right? So there's a different version of the ECAS. There's yet another one and another, right? I need to know all these things. I need to know how to switch all these things. Like, look at all the different settings for the ND, different radios, different modes. You know, like there's the nav one, doesn't seem to be any different. The approach one, you know, different ranges, you can set them here too, right? Does it change it in the, did that change it on that side? No, it's changing it here. Yeah, they're like co-handling it. But I need to know how to change these as well from buttons and switches. So that's really where I'm at, guys. Sorry for the rambling, because I'm really still giving this a lot of thought and trying to figure out how to handle all these different things. Just need to be able to figure that out. So if you have any comments or questions or concerns, or if you want to offer any advice on what I'm doing here, please comment below. And yeah, I'll see you guys soon, and I'll give you updates as we go. All right. So thanks, guys. See you later.